Great. So today we're going to talk about ChatGPT as it aligns to your nonprofit. Just a few housekeeping rules. Please stay on mute. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and you'll see a sign. You should see a sign. If you don't, yeah, there you'll see a little hand raised there. And then you can also click to lower your hand. That'll just give us a good way to prioritize who has the questions first. And then at all times, you can use the AI companion that I'm starting right now to ask questions in the chat for what we're talking about. So that's a pretty handy tool. And after the call, the recorded meeting can be distributed upon request. So just ask Mackenzie for that. All right. And without further ado, let's begin. I want to talk a little bit about my backstory. So I actually grew up in South Florida, and in 2010, I got my dream job working at a media group, working for large companies like Sears, Disney, Toyota, Harley-Davidson. We filmed a lot of commercials. That little profile picture here is me shooting Steve Buscemi for a charity event. So I had a lot of variety of work in the multimedia space, learning from tier 1 organizations. And in 2012, my mom actually had attempted suicide 3 times. And so that thrust me into this position of caretaking for her while trying to balance my day job. And it also showed me the systemic issues around homelessness and gave me a passion for social impact. So while I was at that job, my boss came up to me and he told me that I had to leave my personal problems at home, that I was spending too much time away from work. And it was just a gut check for me because I have a really stellar work ethic, and to be told that I was missing too much work for something so traumatic, made me revisit, like, what does culture and leadership mean? And so fast forward to 2017, I started teaching organizations, separating out from the media group, teaching organizations how to improve their marketing, but also leaning into their culture and their leadership a little bit more. So I started building this recipe for business success. We call it the AAM roadmap, which stands for Agile Autopoietic Model. And we started pivoting in 2019 to working with marketing, to working solely on business consulting and teaching people why and how to measure their ROI when it comes to marketing. And then fast forward to 2020, I really drove back into my roots. My father came here as an immigrant from Argentina at the age of 18, and working with a lot of the underprivileged minority businesses was really where I felt called to serve. And so today we've worked with over 300 minority-owned businesses, with lots of nonprofits, helping them to start and or scale up. And since the trend of ChatGPT and AI in 2022, we started jumping on that bandwagon. So today we have a team of 20. They're distributed all around the world. As you can see, I'm the ChatGPT guy in Colorado, and made sure I got on that bandwagon as soon as possible. And yeah, we work with a lot of different businesses and nonprofits to basically assess where they are and to build a strategic plan to get where they need to go. And we do that for the underprivileged, leveraging our pay what you can consultation model. So anybody can come to us self-identifying as underprivileged and essentially say that they want to get a consultation session for at least $1. So they decide what rate they pay, and we're able to subsidize the cost from some of the larger organizations that we work with. So segueing, enough about me. Why you even need to implement AI. There's a lot of organizations that I work with, and I would say, like, the general consensus is most people err on the side of, like, oh, it's too complicated, or I'm afraid of it. And I'm trying to move people toward, like, it's inevitable that AI is changing the business landscape, and we need to adapt or we will fall behind. And so some of the statistics that I always reference is, like, the in the mid-90s when Jeff Bezos was getting on the internet, like it wasn't a popular concept. And all the businesses that tried to chase him afterwards fell behind. But there were a lot of naysayers that were saying that it's never going to take off, the adoption isn't there. ChatGPT was adopted like, I don't know, 100 times faster than Facebook was. And so this exponential curve of technology adoption is going faster than we can even catch up to. And as a tech guy that grew up on the computers, like for me, it's very scary to dance in the AI space. Like I'm afraid of this power as well, but I still don't stray away from it because I recognize the importance of trends in business and nonprofit spaces and like bandwagoning on those trends. So any other questions or doubts or fears that you all have, feel free to raise your hand and otherwise we'll move on. So how do you implement AI in, what are the 7 different ways that we do this? So some of the research from Underline shows, for enhanced donor engagement, to drive data-driven decision-making, to have smarter fundraising, to improve your program management. That's one of the things that I'm using AI for in my nonprofit, and to evaluate real-time programs and providing targeted marketing support and advocacy. So we're going to drive a little bit deeper into these topics as we go on. But before we do, since we have a little bit of a smaller group, can you guys just comment in the chat what you're hoping to get out of this workshop? I would love to tailor the workshop and the presentation to your specific problems and needs, and we can kind of go through some use cases there. And then Mackenzie, if you could just gather those comments and put them in the outline that we have. So give you just a second to do that. So for those of you that are commenting about fundraising, I would love to know what specific fundraising strategies you're currently deploying. And that'll help me to tailor like which one is better than another, and also like a link to your nonprofit's website. All right, so you'll hear a lot of people coming out of the woodworks calling themselves prompt engineers. If you look on my LinkedIn, you'll see that I have that as well. And so I want to explain what prompting is and how it differs from like a traditional Google search. So prompting specifically for ChatGPT has 3 different components. The first component that most people often miss is assigning a role to the robot. And so you need to tell it who it is and what it's doing. So a lot of times I'll do this by just saying like, you're a human resource manager for a nonprofit. And now I'm going to give it the 5 W's of context. So, I've got 20 volunteers and I have 5 staff members. This is how much the staff members make. This is the personality trait of each one of the volunteers and staff members. And so I'm just giving it all the context that I can. And then I'm giving it the instructions like complete an organizational strategy for me based on this information that you have, and help me to overcome my volunteer hurdles. And I would describe what those hurdles might be. So the 3 components are assign it a role, give it the context, give it as much context as you can, and then give it real simple rudimentary instructions. And I'm going to go over that in a little bit. So the prompts, a lot of times people will say like, well, I can just prompt, there's these different AI tools. We have ChatGPT, which is chat.openai.com. There's Claude, I think it's not .com, yeah, Claude.ai. This one is matching more of inflection in your voice and tone of voice. And then the new competitor by Google is Gemini. And that's supposed to be a big competitor for ChatGPT. So what are the differences between these robots? So ChatGPT is used a lot for reasoning and strategy. If you're paying for the pro version, you have the ability to browse. So I do a lot of competitor research and analysis with that browsing capability. And then I can even transform from strategy to logo design because it has the integration with DALL-E, which is an image generator. But if I'm seeing a lot of these emails coming through, if you've ever been sent an email lately that's generated by ChatGPT, it'll lead with, I hope this email finds you well. ChatGPT has a tone of voice. And so if you want to move away from that kind of tone of voice, you can prompt out of that. But you can also use other robots that specialize in inflection and matching the tone of voice of your brand. And so that's where Claude comes in. I've heard great things about it. I haven't used it yet. Gemini is also a super powerful tool. It has a lot more capabilities that are coming to market, but I have not experimented with that yet. I'm mainly focused on ChatGPT because I'm a big believer in like first to market. Slack dominated Microsoft Teams with being 5 years ahead of Microsoft Teams. And so I believe ChatGPT is several years ahead of Google and Claude and these other competitors. However, depending on what your use is, you can use it for whatever you need, depending on the different capacities of each tool. So my point in showing you all that is all the prompts are written differently for each application. If you subscribe to Midjourney, which is solely an image generator, Midjourney is very powerful for creating logos, for creating designs, marketing materials, anything that is visual. And I would say because of they're so far ahead of the game with Canva, they're a bigger competitor than Canva. However, Canva is probably easier to use than Midjourney. But the prompts are way different with Midjourney than they are with ChatGPT. So no two prompts for these different robots are alike. That's my point. So what's the difference between Googling and prompt engineering? So when you prompt engineer, you're trying to tell it its role, provide context, ask for help, and then provide strategy and refine. Whereas if you're Googling, it's more binary. So you're asking the questions, you have to manually sift through the answers, and you have to mentally combine that research and have reasoning yourself. But if I were telling ChatGPT, search the internet for potential nonprofit partners in the homeless space in Denver, it can do all of that research for me and provide the sources for that. So this is pretty basic search, but I will utilize this if I need to do the research alongside my strategy. So here you can see the resources are linked there. And that's super helpful because it's doing all of the research for me. Now, if you use a Microsoft computer and you use Microsoft Edge as a browser, Microsoft Edge has ChatGPT built in to their browser, and that is now called Bing Chat. And it also searches the web in the same capacity, and you can toggle the reasoning, and you don't have to pay for that. ChatGPT is only $20 a month. It saves me probably 30 days each month, like legitimately that much time. So for $20 a month, it is worth it for me, but I don't pay for the other ones right now. Any questions on prompting before we move on to some of the more complex topics? So prompting is very important that you understand the basics here. And I want to make sure that you guys don't have any questions. All right.
Joshua, so, I have a question. Sorry, I'm
perfect.
So I couldn't raise my hand.
No problem.
Between the three things, and I know that you said you haven't used Claude yet, but you've used some of the other ones. Could you give a little bit more context as to what would be like the ideal request to bring to each of those browsers in your opinion? I know
Sure.
you started saying that, but would you mind like a little bit more clarity around that?
Yeah, so like there's thousands of project management tools, but typically organizations only focus on like Asana, Monday, or ClickUp. And so why am I going to bombard you and overwhelm you with all of the AI tools that are out there when I don't know what your problem is? So I always start from where the problem is. What are you trying to solve? What are you trying to build? If fundraising strategies is what you're trying to build, ChatGPT will stand out from the rest as the highest reasoning tool and the best one to develop strategy, especially because it has web capabilities now. Now, if you're trying to engage with your donors and you're saying like, okay, well, I want to create an automation flow so that every donor receives a personalized message after they donate, you might integrate Claude in that workflow so that Claude can better match your tone of voice in that email reply. If you're doing heavy design, that's where I would recommend Midjourney. I use ChatGPT to brainstorm design, but if I'm going to finalize a design, I'm going to create a real accurate prompt in Midjourney. And oftentimes I'll tell ChatGPT to create the prompt for me for Midjourney and explain the rules, because I can go to Midjourney's documentation and I can explain all of the ways to prompt. So they have all of these variables. And if you need to learn all of these manually, it's going to take some time to figure out how to prompt it. But I can just copy all of this into ChatGPT and say, hey, this is how Midjourney works. This is their documentation. I want an image that looks like this. Write me a prompt for it. And that will save me so much time in learning how to use Midjourney.
Thank you. That's super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So in order for you guys to kind of go through this workshop with me, like you need to understand, like back in 2017, when I was building this recipe, I was digesting hundreds of books a month. And because of the combined knowledge of that, we developed a model for organizational design. And so that's the AAM roadmap. This is what it visualizes as a Parthenon. And so it's what we believe is the success for an organization, is having a very solid foundation, which includes your business model, your revenue model, your brand story, and your go-to-market strategy. And then you have these 4 pillars that, as you're building your organization, you want to make sure that you're laying the bricks of each pillar equally, because if they're not equal, if you're lacking in innovation, which most of you are not because you're here in this meeting, like you are going to be shocked when new tools come out. Or for example, with organizations that did not stimulate their culture, they had a huge shock when COVID hit and they lost a lot of people because there was no loyalty to the mission and the vision. So real quick, culture is your team, value is the value you deliver to your customers or your constituents. Innovation is unlocking innovation for you, your team, and feedback from your donors or your customers. And then operations is always, I like to say, all the boring stuff in your business or your organization, all of the policies, processes, and procedures, the risk and the compliance. For me, that's fun, but for most people, it's boring. So as long as you start on a solid foundation with a business model, you can start to work up into these pillars. And I'm showing you this because it is how I prompt all of these AI tools. The business model component is probably one of the most important parts. So as we go through this workshop, I want you to take note of the following topics of interest and see where you want to see more of the application of these programs and how we might be able to explain that over the call today. So foundation is business model design. We use this primarily in ChatGPT. We program in the entire business model of the nonprofit or organization. And it's important to remember that, like, you guys are all in the nonprofit space, but the best nonprofits are run like for-profits. They're thinking about monetization and how do we sustain this ecosystem of impact. And so I use ChatGPT to create these ecosystem revenue models for nonprofits based on all of the inputs of who are we solving the problem for, what problem do they have, how are we solving the problem. And so in the context of this AI workshop, all of that information that I'm feeding the robot goes back to this prompting is providing the context. So I'm providing all of the context as the organizational model, because if I give it all of this information and I ask it one simple question, create a fundraising strategy for me, it has all the background knowledge of my organization. So you can see here, we have our clients as a discussion thread, and this discussion thread has the knowledge base of the business model of one customer. And then I have different ones for, I'm an instructor at Thrive. And so it knows everything about the Thrive network, the entrepreneurs that we're trying to help, and this, the nonprofit's mission. And so when I just ask it to write a brief email for me, it knows to speak the language from the context that I originally gave it. Another nonprofit example here is a nonprofit in Denver that's focused on suicide prevention using the 4 elements of hip hop. And so we have everything built in here, and I'm rebuilding the website. So all I need to do is tell it a quick instruction of give me a summary of the About Us website, About Us section for the website, and it knows all of the background to output. Does that make sense for everybody? All right, so the culture pillar is really about human resource management. That might be whether you're talking about staffing strategies, retention strategies, volunteer solicitation strategies, volunteer retention strategies. So anything related to people, mission, vision would fall under the culture. Value is the value you deliver to your people, to your constituents. So there we're talking about the look and feel under the brand, the marketing, user experience design. And I would say user experience design is probably one of the most helpful components of AI, is the ability to understand what problem we're solving for each, I'm going to call them customers. So in the nonprofits, we have a donor that is a customer, and then we have the person we're trying to help, and that's a customer, and we're solving the problems differently. So if you look at the Uber model, like we have a rider and a driver, we're providing rides for the rider, we're providing income for the driver. And so we're solving 2 different problems for 2 different customer segments. So I want you to think through that lens as you're going through user experience design, especially because it can directly impact your bottom line. When we look at innovation, we're looking at the processes that we already have in place and trying to figure out what can be automated, how can I save as much time as possible. The way that I do this when I'm consulting for organizations is I look at where are the most time consumers for the leadership staff, and what are the most energy consumers. So they don't often go hand in hand. So energy for me is working with people one-to-one, but I take a lot more time to teach a class, to speak in front of people, 20, 40, 50 people. And I'd rather do that because it restores my energy. So I'm looking at those different components in organizations and trying to figure out how do I automate the things that are consuming the most energy for the leadership staff? Because if I focus on energy first, then you'll have the mental capacity to focus on how to automate things to save you time. And lastly, operations, we're focusing on developing strategies, writing SOPs, standard operating processes, funding strategies, reducing risk, and compliance. So focusing on culture first. And let me just rewind back to this foundation part. I don't have a slide for this, but the assumption is that we all have a good understanding of our nonprofit's organizational model. the problems we're solving, who we're solving it for, and what is the service that we're trying to offer. So if that's the context that you're feeding the chatbot, then these are some of the ways that I've personally used the AI tools to help me. So, for example, determine roles and responsibilities for each team member based on personality type. This is a very big one for me, and I'm going to just walk you through kind of how I do that. So I need to find my nonprofit thread. So given that it already has the context of my team and their personalities, but I don't remember if I prompted this specific thread, I'm going to say, give me the team members you have on file, their personality types and hourly rates to ensure that I sent them to you. So I'm really writing to it like I would write to a team member. But the more I write to it, the less rudimentary it becomes, the more advanced I can talk to it. So now that I know it has my team members, their personality types, and their hourly rates, I'm going to say based on their capacities, their personality types, and my estimated monthly budget of $500, give me a strategy to scale my impact and my team simultaneously. I wasn't prepared for these prompts, so ignore my rudimentary instructions. But I wanted to show you kind of how it takes this context and starts to allocate the tasks for the team. So this is what I was talking about, how it's saving me 30 days per month, because I can essentially take the context of my organizational strategy. I can say, these are all the people, this is all the assets that I have access to. I have human assets, I have physical assets, I have monetary assets. This is what we need to do. Recommend your strategic improvements to us. And then based on my assessment and correction, delegate those tasks out for me. I can even go one step further and I can use, and I'm going to go over this a little bit more in depth, but I can use another tool to connect to this and assign those tasks automatically. And so that's really helpful. It saves a lot of administrative time. Any questions before we move on from culture? Go ahead, Mackenzie.
I think it's helpful just to give a little bit more context. When you gave the initial personality traits of your employees, how did you go about doing that? Was that listing it off and just saying, here's just some information you need to know in this thread? And then was it subjective, like your understanding of their skill sets, I guess?
Yeah, so I'm taking their my job posting, which ChatGPT developed. I take their application and I feed the application in there. And part of my application process is having them do personality tests. So we get that result in, we feed that to ChatGPT as well. And then based on the organizational needs, we cherry pick the things that are aligned to the personality to assign to the person, because now I'm intrinsically motivating them. They're not motivated by money, and they're much easier to retain in the organization.
That is very cool. And then in line with that, Antonio was just asking, what's the tool that you connect with to automate the tasks or assigning?
Yeah, we're going to go over that. Okay. We're going to go over that a little bit more in depth in just a minute.
Perfect.
So designing the onboarding experience, this is something that I'm doing constantly. I'm constantly refining my onboarding experience, not only for my clients, my constituents, but also for my team members. So, we separate the team members by volunteers and staff. And so I'm often redesigning that alongside ChatGPT. I'm trying to look at what are the best of the best onboarding experiences look like? How does Google onboard their people? And then what are the steps that I need in my organization, and how do we combine those strategies? So like that really intensive combination of strategy A from your organization and like Google's strategy for onboarding is very time consuming and energy draining to figure out how to match in these different steps of the onboarding experience. Those are things that ChatGPT helps me out with a lot. And then also delegating the next steps for volunteers, because a lot of times they'll come in and they'll say, hey, I don't have anything to do. What do I do? And I need to be able to give them a lot of instructions very quickly that are very aligned with our programs, with our mission and our vision. So moving on to the value pillar. So this is about the sales experience, if we're talking in business acumen, but with a nonprofit space, it's the volunteers that we're trying to attract, the donors that we're trying to attract, and the constituents that we're trying to serve. And so we're looking at the user experience across the board for those three customer segments. And then some of the ways that we use that here is just creating the logo and brand guidelines, developing marketing strategies, automating your constituent experience, and collecting key data points for donors. So this is something that I think is really relevant. Is I want to know all of the points. I was just having a conversation about this last night with one of the other nonprofits that I mentor, is they're not getting enough donor engagement. And I said, well, Charity Water's model is really this tangible feeling of like, okay, as soon as I donate, I can see where my money goes. I can see the well that's built. And so that immediate reciprocity on my dollar is what is going to encourage me to continue to give and show other donors, hey, they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're actually moving my dollar into tangible impact. And so ChatGPT can really help you to define the KPIs that donors want to see once you fill in their information, how you're tracking things, what type of KPIs we can track. KPIs, by the way, are key performance indicators if you're not familiar. And then once we have those data points, we can look at the onboarding experience for the people we're trying to serve. And we can say, okay, at step 1, 5, and 8, we're going to take these types of data points because they're valuable for our donors. And so ChatGPT will help us do that. I'm going to just walk through it right now. We call individuals experiencing homelessness neighbors. So it already has that context in its system. So another thing that you can do is like this paragraph is really inundating my brain. I want to list that out in tabular format and assign collection next actions to my team. Sometimes you have to argue with your team member. So here you can see it's saying you can't do that. And I'm just challenging it and saying, yes, you can. I'm not breaching any policies or any privacy or security concerns. So it's just not understanding my instructions. We experience the same problems with our team members our volunteers, staff sometimes. And so it's just a matter of repeating yourself or just changing the instructions. So now I can see the types of metrics that are actually going to be valuable, and I can delegate those next actions to my team to put into place. So in line with that, automated donor experience, we're going to talk about some of the automation tools that I use to integrate. And then program design. This is especially helpful as you guys, some of you may heard when I was sharing my pains. Program design is something that's very hard, and delegating that design to the volunteers, something that I'm actively struggling with. But ChatGPT has been a lifesaver when it comes to that, because I can, talk about the grants that I'm trying to apply for, and look at how we're designing our programs and making sure that it aligns to the grants that I'm trying to apply for. So when we're talking about AI and innovation, we're looking at the ways that ChatGPT is innovating within itself. So if you have the Pro version, you might notice that there's this new Explore GPTs option on the top left. And this is basically what the Apple Store did for us with the rise of the App Store, App Store, not Apple Store. So GPTs are like a new type of app, and this app can be preloaded with all of the context and the instructions. So let me take somebody who shared their link. So we have Assistance League in Denver, and I'm going to create a GPT for that. So done very little fundraising, starting from scratch. So fundraising consultant. All right, so here in the knowledge base, this is where I can actually upload files. And when ChatGPT is being prompted, it's going to reference these files first. So this is very helpful if on Assistance League Denver, there's like a PDF that I could download, some sort of doc that would not be scrapable on their website. So I'm just going to grab, let's see, we have impact statement, and that's a PDF. So I'm just going to download that and upload it here. So now when I create this, I can decide whether I want it to be public to the store, which means anybody can access it. If I want to distribute it just within my team, only the people with links can have it, or if I just want it for me. So now when I'm prompting this GPT, so it's no longer ChatGPT, it's a GPT. The GPT is specifically designed for Assistance League Denver. And when I start a new thread here, it's going to look at its knowledge and the website, and it's going to give me a pretty concise fundraising strategy, because I did not give it a lot of knowledge. So GPTs are like a little bit more advanced than just a regular chat, because I don't have to provide all of that context every time. And if I notice like, oh, I've come into more context, I can upgrade this, I can edit my GPT and change that, these original strategies here. these original instructions. I can add more knowledge. So I'm going to show you one that is a little bit more robust that I've created. So this is for the Hispanic Chamber in Colorado Springs, and we're improving their membership benefits. So I need to give it, you know, the 1-year goals, the 3-year goals, everything about the organization. You can see I have 15 different knowledge files here and pretty simple instructions, but this is going to give me really comprehensive answers. Any questions on the GPTs before we move on? Okay. So when we're talking about leveraging that software that Antonio was asking about, this software is called Zapier. And so Zapier is able to connect directly to a GPT. So these threads on the left are individual discussions. And while they do have links that I can grab, that's not what Zapier is going to be looking for. It's going to be looking for these specific GPTs that we've created. So when we go to Zapier, we can create a free account, but the pro accounts are not that expensive for the amount of time that you save. So Zapier has simplified their workspace, and I want to create a donor engagement workflow between Gmail and writing my replies to donors via ChatGPT. So what this is going to do is it's going to try to understand how I want to integrate the softwares, and it's going to recommend the steps to how that might work. So here it's starting step 1 with Gmail as the input, but really the input might be like a donor box. So let me change my sentence here between receiving a donation in donor box and sending a Gmail So this is more accurately what I wanted to accomplish. And so now I have to connect the conversation with a custom GPT. So you can see that option at the bottom, rather than creating a new discussion thread with GPT, because I wanted to have that existing knowledge of our mission, our vision, how we talk to our people. I might even print or combine all of the emails that I've sent to previous donors, so it can see how I talk to donors and try to match that tone of voice. But again, Claude is going to be a better better factor for this Zapier workflow than ChatGPT will. So the last tool that I want to show you is kind of like the end all be all for AI tools. And so this will index all of the new tools that are out there. So if you're looking for any specific category, back to Haley's question of how do I know which tool to use? I'm going through these types of databases. There's several that are out there, but this is one that I like to recommend a lot. So if I'm going to, I host a podcast or a vodcast. So video editing tools are going to really help me to automate some of my workflow there. And they have different upvotes. Some of them have freemium subscriptions, other ones are paid. but you can explore like all of the AI tools that are out there. It's not just these three big names, you know, between ChatGPT. And so, yeah, any questions on these tools before we move on? Okay. And I'll share this presentation as well, so you can have those links that are embedded. So lastly, operations. I would say like between all of the components, culture, value, innovation, and operations, operations is where I spend the most time with ChatGPT, because its reasoning and strategy skills are higher than a lot of other tools. So updating the organizational strategy helps me to assess different needs in the organization, and also prioritize what is the best way to get started if grants are not an option. So I'm looking at improving the impact with a minimal amount of volunteers, measuring that impact, and then proving that impact to my donors. Developing standard operating processes. I'll say that this is a class that I just taught last night between policy, process, and procedure. Most people don't write procedures anymore because they're too detailed. So as long as you, as the organizational leader, are starting at the top with defining the policies, you can delegate writing simplistic processes. So you can think of processes like 1, 2, 3, and procedures being like 1A, 1B, 1C, as more detailed. So I try to stay very high level, and then hire for common sense as much as possible, so that my people know, as long as we're adhering to the policy, the process, you can figure it out as you go. And so developing SOPs alongside ChatGPT has been very helpful. I would just say that because these are such new softwares, they often go down. You can check chat OpenAI status, and you can see like when they're down. ChatGPT, you know, has occasional outages. You can see this one was 5 hours on February 13th. So I'm in the habit of, you know, running prompts and then using this little copy tool. So let's go to my thread here, and there's a little copy button down here, and that will copy all of the formatting. And then I'm just going to go to docs and capture that in here. So you can see if you're pasting the table in Google Doc, it's not going to retain the formatting. But if I were to go to Sheets, and I just grab this table, just doing Command C or Control C, and then I'm doing Command Shift V, which pastes without formatting. So I'm going to do that again, edit, paste special values only, and then I can format that as I want to. So get in the habit of not trusting the software to retain your information. Move it over to a safe place so that it doesn't slow you down if there's a 5-hour downtime. There's a lot of people using this. As I told you, the adoption rate of ChatGPT is 10 times faster, 100 times faster than Facebook. And so these softwares are likely to have repeated downtimes as they're trying to scale up. All right, so this is probably one of the most important ones that I think is on top of mind for all of us. So I'm going to walk you through how I do this, and let me just try to choose another organization here. Could anybody tell me a grantor that you guys have applied to before, maybe did not get accepted? I'm going to do a quick exercise on that. Anybody have potential grantor that you want to apply for grants to? Okay, I'm gonna do one of my own if I don't see anybody write in the message. Okay, outdoor equity grant, gotcha. So here I've got a PDF and I've got a website, another website. And Haley, what is your nonprofit?
Colorado Young Leaders.
So if I were doing this seriously, I would be much more detailed about it, but I'm just going to show you the principles of creating this. So I'm gonna, because there's a few links and PDFs, I want to save time by creating a GPT. So just going to move these off screen so I can grab all the links. So whenever I write to ChatGPT, I'm using legalese. So I'm using always, shall, must, different terms that constrain the boundaries. So you can see here in less than 5 minutes, we've written 2 grant applications. One is going to be a little bit more tailored to the grantor, and that is what I believe will encourage a better conversion rate on the grant applications.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I think it took our executive director a few days to put that information together.
Right. Yeah, so it's great at like sifting through the information for us so we don't have to, but like I don't want to sacrifice my mission and vision and our core values to get the grant. I want to find places of alignment. So that's where I'm using real high reasoning.
Wow.
Any other questions on that?
I guess because you mentioned Claude does a really good job with the tone, right?
Yeah.
And a big thing in grant applications can be that foundations want you to kind of speak their lingo, right?
Right.
Because of that, would you then take whatever ChatGPT just fed out to you for that application and plug that into Claude and say, now note with the link saying, this is the language of the grant, this is the application we're going, can you shift it to align more closely with the language they use?
Yeah, absolutely. And I haven't done this yet, but let me try. It's not going to give me that ability because the file is too large. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, I would want to do A/B testing with that, and I would look at them side by side, and my executive staff or my board would say, yeah, that sounds more along the line. So I'm never trusting these tools like 100%. They're always human verified.
Yep. But serves as a great example for all of you to see again that there's ways to use different AI sources with each other, right? In order to get the most impact on your business.
Yeah, and then connecting them in automated workflows with tools like Zapier. So considering our programming, I want to assess risk with quantitative and qualitative inputs using a risk matrix and tabular format. Looks like it's glitching a little bit. There we go.
Joshua, while you're doing that, is there a quick way to, do you have a cheat sheet or anything that shows how to use the different AI tools that are available and the different integration tools, the integration apps, and when it would be most appropriate to mix and match those to try to do what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah, I would say like rather than a cheat sheet, use ChatGPT as your source. Okay. And then when you're going to a different tool, ask ChatGPT, this is what I'm trying to do. Which tool would you recommend for this? Because it has access to the internet. So the cheat sheet, if I were to build you a PDF one, is going to change in 3 months because of how fast these tools are moving. So using the tool as a cheat sheet and saying like, what is the best way that I can prompt you? How do you want me to ask this question? Exercises the tool as if you had me as a consultant right alongside you, and I'm going to give you that feedback. So the more context you give it, you're upgrading the robot from rudimentary to more advanced. And you'll do that thread to thread. So each one of these threads is siloed information. They don't cross over. And then down here, you have customization options. And this information is across all threads. So that's like context across all threads.
Makes sense, makes sense. But you would definitely recommend upgrading to the ChatGPT 4 version.
Yeah.
Where was that customized field?
It's down here on my name and then customized ChatGPT. That's on the pro version. So I imagine if I prompted this in another 6 months when their internet was updated, that the output would probably change. So it's going off of my context. That's why it's narrowing down into this. So if I were doing a cheat sheet for you, I probably would not have put add creative there because I've never heard of it before. So that's why I'm like, you know, you could depend more on these tools for customizing your question and curating your own cheat sheet for your own organization. And huge fan of the sources. So the last one that I just did was assessing risk based on our nonprofit. And so here you can see the output of that. We've got funding as a risk, volunteer turnover, program disruption, data privacy. And so from this risk assessment, I could build these mitigation strategies. So depending on what you're looking for there, like I prefer more lists. So I might prompt that again, you know, to output it in a list or a step-by-step version. So just continue to retrain. Like you have to remember all of these AI tools are machine learning models. So they don't know everything off the bat. They don't know who you are. So the more context you give it and you start correcting course, it's kind of like putting up the bumpers in bowling, like you're directing it into one path. Lastly, determining filing requirements. This is something that's been super helpful for me. And just a quick story. I have a client in Georgia who had a CPA who was doing the filing for him. He had a foreign entity in Georgia, but his original LLC was in Florida. The CPA allowed the original LLC to lapse. So he was just operating as like a free floating foreign entity in Georgia, which is pretty much illegal. And the CPA was at fault here. So I had to go through and look at the Georgia Secretary of State codes. And so I had ChatGPT do that for me. So let me just pull that up here. Actually, I probably can't because of my NDA, but let me show you how that might look for us. So long story short, using ChatGPT, we were able to refile, get his foreign entity converted to an LLC and solve the problem that the CPA created. So even though human error for somebody who was an established CPA was involved, we were able to fix the problem looking at all the laws. I'm not a lawyer, but I was able to research all of it through ChatGPT. So that's where it's really beneficial for me on the reducing risk and organizational compliance side. It's going to take a little bit long, so I'm going to come back to it. So when you're applying any of these tools in the way that I've done it, we always talked about context. And this is the most important thing that I stress so much to my clients and my business partners is using a business model document is going to be really beneficial for you to be able to concisely summarize all of the details of that your organization does. The website is not often a good tell for how your organization runs, because it's built for the customers to see or the donors to see. So what we use is a template that's designed off of the lean canvas, and it goes over what is the problem of your customer, who are you solving it for, and what are your solutions. So let's just take a few minutes here, and I want to help you recraft how you articulate that, because I believe this is the most important aspect of any organization, is knowing how to articulate your solutions as they cover the pains one-to-one for your customers, your constituents, or your donors. So who would like to go first? Anybody? Free consulting session. All right, so I'm going to take in Antonio's organization here. So Antonio, who are your customers? Okay, got it. Let's go to Kelly. Are you able to talk about your organization real quick, Kelly?
Yes.
What's your organization?
Assistance League of Denver.
Okay. And let me see, who are you serving?
We are serving elementary school children and their families and seniors. It's elementary school. It's Title I elementary schools. It's poverty schools.
And how do you serve them?
We partner with 8 elementary schools in the Denver metro area to provide resources to the school to stretch their budgets further.
What type of resources?
New school clothes, books, art enrichment programs, field trips, things that these schools normally are not able to provide.
Great. What do you think the problem is, how the parents of the children describe the problem?
95% of the families that attend these schools are low income, and so they have some instability issues. And so the problem is that it's hard to keep the children on track of being able to fulfill their full potential if there's instability in the household. Is that what you're
Sure.
looking for? Okay.
Yeah. Are you a parent, Kelly?
I am.
How would you describe that if that were your child? Like in the first person, how would you articulate that?
That children in poverty,
So you might say, like, my child is not getting their full potential because.
Yeah, my child is not reaching its full potential because they are not getting enough food at home. They do not want to go to school because they are embarrassed by their clothes. They do not have the same opportunities that children at other schools have access to.
All right. Now, disregarding what you just told me you offer, if you were speaking to that parent that just came to you and articulated the problem this way, how would you articulate your services to them?
I'm sorry, if I were speaking to a parent, or am I still the parent?
You're now the organization, and you're speaking to the parent that just came forward with this problem.
So ALD school programs remove barriers for children experiencing poverty, to put them on the same level playing field as other students.
Sure, that's one way, but
Okay.
you're not covering the pain of the parent.
Oh, it's giving your children the same access as other children have to being able to reach their full potential in school.
So marketing 101 is being able to articulate this solution as a way to cover their pain directly. And the better we can do this with our organization for each customer segment, the better our marketing will reflect. Because if I land on this page, and I don't know if schools are your customer, if the actual parent is the customer, but like I need to see that messaging right front and center. And I know this isn't a marketing presentation, but I do want to cover a little bit of it because it's so important that you're articulating this right. So ClickFunnels are like the masters of landing pages and conversions. But the science that Russell Brunson created here is what works really well. So here you have the problem statement, and they're just reiterating it. And they're articulating the solution as a way to directly cover the problem. Does that make sense? It's
Yeah.
super simple how they articulate it. I had another customer who had an elderberry syrup company, and I said, what do you think the problem is for your customers, how they describe it? And she said, I need elderberry syrup. And I said, well, that's great, it's in the first person, but the self-awareness necessary to know that you need a product that is out there in the market is unrealistic. Like, I don't know what's out there in the market. I know that I don't feel good, or my child doesn't feel good, and I want an alternative to Western medicine. That's why I'm looking for elderberry syrup. So that's what you kind of have to dance around. And when you start to fill out this template with that kind of one-to-one problem customer solution, the types of partners that you might have in the nonprofit space, why you're unique, how do you make money, what are all the costs that we have, how are we measuring success? As you start to fill all of this out, you can take this PDF and upload it into your discussion thread, and it has the 5 W's of context to help you prompt for all of the strategies. So that's why I wanted to go through that tool real quick.
Right.
So we do this in our organization through a pay what you can assessment, and we help you basically go through and articulate that better so you have this business model template. That's our core service offering. So once you have that context written, that's when you're writing the prompt. You might include any situational context in there. And then as I was just telling Leander earlier, you're going to write rudimentary at first, and then increase complexity of thought with each new message. So you don't want to assume that it knows everything. Sometimes if you go too complex too fast, it will give you a wrong output, and then you have to bring it back to simplicity. So if that happens, for example, here you can see the output of compliance. It's just giving me the 501c3, and it's giving me a couple other things, but not really what I wanted. I can go back up here to the pencil icon, and I can change my original prompt. And that will re-output automatically. And while that's thinking, the Third step is to correct the machine learning model. So you want to continuously provide a correction, but also continue to update your original model. So you would continue to go back to this template and change the solutions, who you're solving it for, pretty much everything that you learned from going through the ChatGPT program and any new information that you've got from it. So here you can see it's specifically referencing those Colorado statutes, which is what I was looking for. All right. Lastly, being safe with AI is such an important part of learning to use AI responsibly. You can think of this as a new social media that has come out, and the kids that grew up around social media, how distracted and antisocial they are, is a ramification of this technology coming out too fast, uncontrolled. AI is going down the same path, but at a much faster rate. We don't know the implications of it so far. So 3 things that I recommend is stay human-centered. This is a very common thing from this article here, which is basically saying that if you are putting AI into your workflow, have human oversight, have human involvement at every step of the way, so you can have checks and balances for the AI. The other thing that I'll say is segmenting and siloing the data. It should be from a compliance perspective, but also like ethics and privacy for people. You want to make sure that if you have volunteers and donors and all of these other constituents, like that, we're segmenting and siloing the data, and then from those segments you can build automation workflows so that you have protection and there's no crossover. There's also AI tools that can work if you have a more protected set of information that you can't use ChatGPT. A lot of the people in government, they can't go to ChatGPT because of the regulations there. So you can use another one called Dalai Lama, and this is an intranet based AI that works just like ChatGPT, but it works locally on your computer and within your network. It's an open source thing. I believe it's free. And it works very similar to ChatGPT. So you can essentially build your own local knowledge base, and then you can have your team consult with that knowledge base without actually ever going to a browser. I'll make sure that's the right. I think it's this one. Yeah, this is Dalai Lama. I think the other website was not this one. So I'll leave that in the presentation here as well. And then finally, move slow, plan, test, review, iterate. I never go into these programs without a thorough understanding of how I want the output to exist and what does privacy look like. I want to make sure that we're protecting our people, that I'm doing small tests, and then I'm rolling it out to the team, and then we constantly iterate it. So I'd love to open it up to questions for a few minutes, and then we'll talk a little bit about my organization, how we can stay in touch, and then I think we have some questions. Anybody have questions?
Did you say you're going to be sharing this presentation so we have the links?
Presentation and recording if upon request. Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. And who should we request it from? Just
Mackenzie.
I'm sorry?
Mackenzie.
Mackenzie, okay, thank you.
Hey, Joshua, thank you so much for the presentation so far. It's been great and eye-opener. Question for you. Do you know if ChatGPT and Zapier have some sort of a nonprofit access or discount?
They do not. I've checked into Zapier and that does not have a nonprofit discount. But I'm sure you're familiar with TechSoup. They would be the ones to go through if there are any discounts in the future.
Well, say you had, and this may be outside of the scope of this particular webinar training session, but say, for example, you had a nonprofit come to you that didn't have a website, they didn't do anything, they're brand new, they just, word of mouth, whatever the case may be. I don't know if you're able to just quickly walk us through the template that you showed us. I think that will be the first step, is for them to fill that out, then upload that into ChatGPT to create sort of an outline of what they want to do. Can you demonstrate, and then you can, with the 4 version, you've got, the capabilities for Midjourney to create you a logo or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And I suppose you could tell it to build you a website and then integrate some of the apps to interact with that. I don't know if there's a way you could walk us through how that would look or work, or if that's something that we could just do in a one-off or something like that. But in my mind, based on what you're saying, it seems like that would be sort of the framework of how somebody
for sure
doing that.
You could go from A to Z for sure, but there are simpler avenues. For example, if you're saying, hey, there's a startup nonprofit and they need a website real quick, I could build a website with this in 2 minutes, and I can link my domain name to this host, and it's completely free. So ChatGPT can build me a website outputting the code, and I still have to figure out what to do with that code, and so that's another step added into the administrative or the technological workflow that I don't want to build. But I would start with ChatGPT with like the input, and then I would say, like, write a prompt for me to create a website in gamma.app. I think it's like a 200 character limit to build a website for. And so I would do something like that would give me a prompt for this other tool rather than going through that entire tool the entire way. Does that answer your question, Leander?
Yeah. You can do it in like 2 minutes. Could you demonstrate that in Gamma? What is it, Gamma? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Gamma.
If I have any credits left, let me see.
Is this a free tool or a paid tool?
Free tool, but they have credits that you're off of before you pay.
Okay.
So these are what they call the cards, and it's just an outline. So I can say, well, I want this to be first. Whenever I'm building websites, I'm going off of the golden circle approach: why, how, what, Simon Sinek. So my landing pages always look like that. Why is to resonate, how, and then so I would organize it that way. Once I feel ready, hit continue, and then I can start choosing my theme here on the right. And now your mind is blown.
Correct, sir. Correct.
Yeah. And all of this is drag and drop, so very easy to edit. The caveat is when you publish it, you're left with this URL. So in your name, your like I use Namecheap as the domain registrar. I basically point the domain to this URL as a forwarder.
How do you do that?
It's not too hard. So when you copy this link, you log into your wherever you purchased your domain, and then you'll see a section there for forwarders, and you just paste the URL.
Okay.
So this is what the website would look like for the public, and you can see, you know, tablet view, mobile view, and it's pretty simple to swap out like the images. You can even upload your own. But yeah, I'm gonna go because of time.
You saw a website template that you like, say, from another
What's that?
site. If you saw a website template or a website that you like, is there a way to integrate that template and say, hey, recreate something similar to that? Or would you just have to kind of use what's there in
Yeah, you'd have to use what's there with gamma.app, but that's where I would go back to future tools and look for other website apps that have that kind of mirroring capability. So, you know, there's going to be a lot out there, and you can see there's 1,300, 1,900 tools that relate to a website. So some of them may have that kind of capability.
Got it.
So real quick,
Yeah.
you're welcome. Real quick, the AI movement, like just to show you how fast this is moving. You know, ChatGPT started getting trendy at the beginning of last year. By summer, they were generating images, and they launched AI agents. AI agents you can think of as a chatbot talking to another chatbot and creating recursive progress. So you can basically say, hey, I want you to build me a coffee shop from business model to website design, and it will constantly ping itself for building that out. It will give you the business model. It'll build out all of the different applications that you need, the social medias, like it'll go through everything that the human would do and leave you with a complete business. So that came out last summer. You know, and that's how fast things are moving. January of this year, GPT store and the ability to control your physical environment, integrating with different tools like Zapier. There's physical Zapiers that connect with your lights and all the different things in your house. And now we're approaching video, which is incredibly scary because we don't know what's real anymore on video. And so just anticipate these things, you know, from a safety standpoint. Especially with a local level, deep fakes are becoming a more real thing. Seeing people that you know on video talking to you, asking you for money, and it's not actually them, it's a virus, a hacker. So those are things to be concerned about in the forefront. And as always, we are here for support in that. These are some of the services that we offer at Cressio. We love working with nonprofits, social impact organizations, and helping them to get structured, organized, and scale up. Our sales process is real simple. So we do an initial consultation, which is off of that template that you saw. In that, we're trying to solve your 1 or 2 top urgent concerns. And then if you want to engage with us going forward, we do a longer implementation, and our remote project managers work hand in hand with you to implement. And our success metric is working ourselves out of a job in 18 months or less. So we're trying to build sustainability in your organization and then leave so that you don't need to rely on a third party going forward. We've got loads of testimonials and Google reviews that support our work, and case studies if you have any specific requests on that. And that's about it. Any other questions for me? Great, well, I'll pass it over
Thank
to
you
you,
guys for
Mackenzie.
doing this.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Andrew.
First, well, thank you, Joshua. I think everyone, based on looking through the comments in the chat, got a ton of value out of this. We want to hear from you all though. So at the end, after we got off the call, I'm going to follow up today with a survey. Let us know kind of the impact of this, what you liked, what you would want to see in the future. As I mentioned, Lighthouse is all about building community for nonprofits, so both in person and online. And so if we hear that these types of sessions like this today was valuable, that will help us iterate that into our programming, as well as continue to pursue opportunities with Joshua as well, if this was significantly valuable for you guys. I'm glad you could all be here. In the interest of time, because we're a little over, we'll call it at that, but let's all keep in touch and I'll follow up with Joshua's information as well. Okay.
Thank you all. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. That was amazing.
Thanks, Haley.
It's up. That was so great.
Yeah,
That was really great. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did. It distracted me from feeling bad.